What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, dude. Another special video for you guys. We're gonna look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. Now what's funny is I just did the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge Plus. I don't know if I'm gonna drop it before or after this video. If I drop it after this video, that's gonna be super awkward and I apologize ahead of time. But this is a phone that I haven't even actually had on this channel. Now I discussed it and everything, but I never actually reviewed on this channel. So this is the first time, and there's a first time for everything. The Samsung Galaxy Note 8 is going to be dropped on this channel finally. I know you guys have been waiting. Now this is one of those phones where at a time I was like, the Samsung is taking a really weird approach. Okay, now don't shoot me yet because this is just my opinion at the time. This was back in 2017 when this thing was released, and I saw early 2017 Samsung dropped the Galaxy S8 and I was like, man, this is really hit or miss, huh? Like they dropped the home button, they took a completely different approach, you know, and put the fingerprint sensor on the back by the camera. But I guess over time we got used to it, and I didn't think they were going to drop the home button on the Galaxy Note 8, but they eventually did. And honestly, what I can tell you is at the time I didn't really like it, but it eventually grew on me, and I'm so glad at this point that they did switch to the nav bar buttons, because I think the home buttons are so like out of date. It's like 2000 late, you know what I mean? So I'm super glad they dropped that, because that's just like, in my opinion, that's just another hardware thing to break. Now I would really wish they switched up where the fingerprint sensor was, but it's okay. I guess we'll get used to it. It's not that big of a deal. But looking at the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, this thing was dropped in 2017 in August, and I personally think that Samsung has a down pat to when they drop their phones. They drop on an early 2017 or early in the year, and they drop one later in the year, and they're just freaking geniuses at that. Now looking around, this thing is actually built very, very well. I think from like the Galaxy S6, Samsung has just been knocking out the hardware and just like the feeling of the phone. This thing feels like a $50,000 phone. Totally joking, but this thing still feels like a very, very premium phone, and it really shows, because obviously the Galaxy Note 9 looks and feels exactly the same thing as this. The Galaxy Note 10, whenever that drops, is probably going to drop the bezels just with the Infinity O display. But in terms of this is pretty bezel-less, and I think I really like this design still. I would probably prefer this design over the notch design that I see on a lot of phones, including the iPhone, so this is definitely a plus in my books. Now it has a 6.3-inch Super AMOLED display on the front. It's 1440p, extremely high PPI in my opinion, as around 521 pixels per inch, and I can tell you this panel is very, very good. It's still good now. I don't think this is like a super old phone. I mean, it's going to turn 2 years this year, but I definitely think the build of this phone is one of the biggest pluses of it. I mean, you got glass on the back, you got a fingerprint sensor, you got the S Pen that I will go into in a second, and you got a very, you know, bezel-less design almost. It's just a very good looking phone overall. You got a USB Type-C port on the bottom, as well as a headphone jack, so you're pretty much set. And the coolest thing is that it does have IP68 dust and water resistance, where, you know, looking in 2019 and looking forward, most phones are going to be dropped with, I said dropped so many times, but most phones are going to be released with some type of IP certification. So you're kind of future-proofed in that sense. So don't even worry about the water protection or whatever. You're going to be fine on this phone. Now this thing also has two interesting features, okay? It has the 3D touch on the home button itself. I don't really understand why they did that, but I guess it, you know, mimics what a home button used to do. So if some people miss that and they can't move on with their life, they have that option. And you also have the always on display. So that's super, super cool for some people. For me, I honestly don't like it that much. I wish it was just like an LED notification on the front of the screen. I don't like having all that time and everything. I know it doesn't suck up too much battery, but it's just kind of, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of OCD about it, but it's whatever. I guess I'm being a little baby about it. But moving on to the software, okay? Now this thing was released with Android 7.1.1 Nougat, and currently it does have Android Oreo. That's what I tested it on now. But Samsung is doing something really, really cool, okay? Now I hope it's cool. I have seen a couple videos about it. They're moving away from their TouchWiz UI, and they're switching to their new software called One UI. And they're kind of doing this thing where they're like trying to branch away from TouchWiz. I guess that has a really bad connotation to it, and I totally understand because I never liked TouchWiz. But Samsung is doing their own software now, which they did before, and it's supposed to be a little bit cleaner here and there. But what I'll tell you is that from what I'm seeing, it's supposed to be better than TouchWiz, okay? That's from what I'm kind of getting a consensus on. I was not able to test it on my Galaxy Note 8 because it wasn't released, and I wasn't able to install a beta on it when I had the Note 8, so I'm kind of sorry about that. But I don't think too much is going to change in terms of the performance or anything. I think that's more so of software. And honestly, if I owned the Galaxy Note 8 as a main device, I probably wouldn't even keep it stock. Like, I wouldn't keep the stock launcher. I would keep it stock, but like I'd probably put like Nova launcher or some other launcher on it to kind of compensate for TouchWiz being on the phone. But in terms of software, I would say you have at least another software version. You know, obviously you're getting the One UI and the software updates associated with that. I don't think it's going to get Android 10 though. I mean, I could be wrong. I think it's pretty much going to stop at Android Pie or the One UI it's going to get. Yeah, but I don't think it's going to get Android 10. Like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it keeps going. But in terms of software, I think we're definitely at the end of its life cycle, which is kind of sad because this phone still has a, you know, it's still a very well built phone, man. And that kind of leads me into the performance aspect of it. Now, there were some different variants of this phone, so I'll tell you the specs of both the models. So I'm guessing there's one like an international model and like a USA model from what I'm seeing. So one of the models had an Exynos 8895 octa chipset, and another one had a Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chipset, so I'm pretty sure that's the one inside of America. Both models had octa-core CPUs, and both models had 6 gigs of RAM. And with those specs, and honestly, like this phone can fly anything. Did you hear what I just said? This phone can fly itself, all right? Just kidding, I stuttered, but this phone can literally do anything you want it to. It'll be able to walk itself, talk itself, bathe itself. I mean, like at this point, because this phone is still so spec heavy, there's really nothing I can say that'll make it seem cooler than what it already is. Obviously it can handle everything, gaming, performance, heavy apps. If you're a super heavy user, this phone will be able to handle everything just fine. I currently own an iPhone 10 as a main device. I've owned the 10s and 10s Max. I've pretty much owned every single phone, and this is probably one of the fastest phones I've ever owned, but that's not really saying much because I don't even try to compare phones all the time. If a phone's fast, then it's fast. If it's slow, it's slow. If it's mediocre, then it's mediocre. And this phone, I think it's very fast still. Is the fastest phone out right now? Probably not. There's probably phones way faster than this, but because I don't try to compare, I just look at a phone by itself and seeing if it's fast or not. This phone, in terms of performance, will last you far longer than what the software will support. And I've said that in every single video where I'm comparing a phone that's still really, really good in terms of hardware. Like, the software will be done before the hardware is done on this phone. So I'll definitely say that this phone has a lot of life left in it in terms of performance. So don't even worry about the specs or anything. Gaming, performance, everything is going to be fine on this. Don't you worry, all right? Now, that's probably the worst way I've ever summed up the performance, but like, what am I supposed to say when the performance of a phone is so good? Like, it's way out of words. And I'm sure the Galaxy Note 9 is way faster. I think I did a video on the Galaxy Note 9. I can't even remember at this point, but if I haven't, I'm going to do one very, very soon. But that's pretty much enough of the performance. Let's go ahead and move on to the camera side of things. And this thing has a dual camera setup on the back. You have two 12 megapixel sensors, and both sensors actually do have optical image stabilization. And what I can tell you is that this camera is still very, very, very good. Okay, there's really nothing wrong with this camera at all. I wish there was so I can complain about it, but I really have no complaints. I still think my iPhone 7 Plus's camera is still pretty decent. I think all these other cameras are pretty good. I think the camera on the Galaxy S7 was very good too, and this is just an even better camera than those, and you can shoot 4K videos on it at 30 frames. As far as I know, there's no 4K at 60 frames, which is kind of dumb. I really wish they put it in, but you can do 1080p at up to 60 frames, and honestly, I kind of expected it to do more. That's probably my only complaint, was more like video frame resolutions that you could shoot in, or like more frame speeds, but this is not that big of a deal. I don't think many people are going to go above 30 frames, so I guess it's whatever. But dude, this camera is definitely good. You're not going to have any complaints about it. The front camera is 8 megapixels, and I think Samsung's done a pretty decent job, considering the fact that the phone before this blew up, but then the phone before that was a Note 5 that Samsung supported for even longer than it needs to do because of the Note 7 debacle. And I don't think the front camera on that phone was that good, but the Galaxy Note 8's front camera is pretty decent. So what I'll tell you is, to sum up both cameras, they're very, very good sensors. I really have no problems with either of them. Maybe the frame speeds could have been, upped a little bit, maybe 4K at 60, but really other than that, I have no complaints. The camera on this thing is still very, very good. Now, moving on to the battery life. This is kind of important to note because I love battery life, and I think the thing that phone manufacturers try to do is try to say, well, we can put a smaller battery in this device, but it'll overcompensate because it'll last longer in terms of software optimization, whatever. That's not true. Phone manufacturers need to put bigger batteries in their phones. If a phone manufacturer drops a phone in 2019 with less than a 3,000 mAh battery, I say we boycott their company. Just kidding. That's completely just false. Okay, don't do that. But the Galaxy Note 8 came with a 3,300 mAh battery, so it's over that 3,000 mAh limit. But with the Galaxy Note 8, because it's kind of flagged as like a humongously better phone than I guess the regular Galaxy S series, they should have put a bigger battery in it, I think. Maybe like a 4,000 mAh battery. They definitely increased it when they went up to the Note 9, so that's definitely a plus. But still, I would have loved to have seen a bigger battery on this thing itself. You do have Qi wireless charging. You also have USB Type-C, like I said. And I think the battery life is pretty decent. Because this phone wasn't released too long ago, the battery degradation really hasn't hit too much on too many variants of these. Now, it's probably hit on a couple people because they probably don't take care of their phones. But I think overall, the battery life isn't that bad. Could have been better. If I took my usage on my iPhone 10 and put it on here as my daily phone, I could probably get through a day with it, but I might have to charge it maybe towards 7 p.m.-ish. I would probably end the day maybe with 10-15%, just because this phone does have a pretty big screen. It has the power. Also, it's a pretty high resolution screen, high PPI, so I could see the battery life dying maybe quicker than some other phones out there, but you know what? It is what it is. I don't think the battery life is too bad on this thing. Now, some other notable things to note, like I said, this phone also has the S Pen, which is super, super cool. I love the S Pen so much. I wish Apple had something like that for their iPhones. I know the Apple Pencil and stuff, but I don't even think that's the worst for the iPhone. So I wish there was something built into the phone, and Samsung really knocked it out of the park with the S Pen. I really, really like that thing. This thing also has a fingerprint sensor, like I stated. It also has some type of iris scanner, so if you're into that stuff, it has it. And another super cool thing this phone has is the micro SD card slot, and that's something that not a lot of phones have anymore, man. iPhones never had it. A lot of other phones don't have it either. This thing does, so you will be pretty much future-proofed in that sense. You can put, I think, up to 512 gigs in this thing, so that is super, super crazy. You have so much space in this thing, so don't even worry about, wasting memory or anything. You can literally get the cheapest model, the 64 gig variant, put a 512 gig SD card in it and be set. This thing could also do the Samsung DeX thing if you're into that. I think it's kind of a waste, but I guess you can do it if you want to. It's kind of like a gimmick, but it is what it is, whatever. So to answer the question, is the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 still worth it in 2019? What I'll tell you is, yes, this phone is still completely worth it in 2019. This is a very, very good phone still. I don't think it's going anywhere for at least another year. After the software support is done, then I would still recommend it after that. Maybe, that's kind of a bold statement, but like I said, dude, the hardware of this phone is super set. You have a very large screen, you have very killer specs. Micro SD card slot, S Pen, all these things, and I just really hope there's a pretty big community behind this in terms of custom ROMs and all that stuff, so then I can start custom ROMing these phones and making it last even longer. So I'm really hoping there's a bigger community behind it, because the hardware would definitely outlast the software in this sense. So if you're one of those people who don't like a huge phone or something like that, maybe even look at a Galaxy S8 that was released the same year as the Galaxy Note 8. And I really like the Galaxy S8 too. I still think that's a very, very good priced phone. So if you like the bigger phone, go for the Note 8. If you like a smaller phone, go for the Galaxy S8. But if you want to pick these out for the cheapest prices, I would probably recommend eBay or Craigslist or all these other websites. But I always try to recommend certified refurbished. They usually come with warranties and they're usually in better quality. You end up spending a little bit more money, but they're usually worth it in the long run. And I'll go ahead and leave some links in the description for the cheapest ones I find on Amazon. So they're usually certified refurbished, so I recommend getting them from there, so you can not only get them for the cheapest prices on Amazon, but you can help out the channel at the same time and help us do more videos like this and do more giveaways and things like that. So they'll be the first links down there if you want to get them straight through Amazon. We'd really appreciate it, but that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all these links are linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.